welcome back to Heroes Behind the Badge. In the last episode, you heard Tom Weitzel's story of survival, how gang members' shotgun blast nearly ended his career and his life during a routine parking violation stop in 1987. Tom's bulletproof vest saved him that night. He returned to duty, rose through the ranks, and became chief of police. But the gang member who shot him, he walked free. The statute of limitations expired before he could be charged. In this episode, we're talking about Tom's fight to change the system that failed him, his advocacy for federal prosecution of line-of-duty death cases, and why he believes every officer in America deserves justice. This is Heroes Behind the Badge, Part 2, Fighting for Justice.
Well, you were leading by example, and I'm sure ultimately the morale there was quite good. You know, you're telling a story about how they came to you and said, you know, put your paperwork in if you want to become the chief. We have a person on our advisory council. He was a deputy chief on a department, and they decided that they were going to do a search outside, like a lot of places do. And he basically said, you know, I've nearly died blood, sweat, and tears for this agency for countless years. I've got every accomplishment, every award. And if I'm not good enough and you got to find somebody else, then find somebody else. And you know what? He just retired. Boom. It was insulting, right? It was insulting for him. It was probably insulting for you.
And I was in the position of acting chief, so I would probably have gone back to deputy chief or operations lieutenant. But I was serious. I'm like, you're not offending me. If you don't know my skills and know what, and here, if you don't want me as your chief, that's okay. I mean, it wasn't, I wasn't going to go behind a rock and cry. And literally the next day they came and said, yeah, you are the guy we want. Let's negotiate an employment contract so you could stay here. And they kept me there for 13 years till I retired.
I love it.
So
hey,
then,
Tom,
go ahead, Craig.
I was just going to say, we started this organization, Citizens Behind the Badge, in part because, wholly because of the defund and defame the police movement. But one of the problems that we were trying to solve and continue to work on is the recruitment and retention problem within law enforcement that was created by the defund movement. Your story, I think, is inspiring in many ways, because not only did you go back on the job after nearly dying for your community, but 3 of your sons are now police officers. And so many officers I've talked to recently, during the defund movement especially, have said they would not encourage their children to become law enforcement officers because of the climate today, the degradation of law enforcement, the potential civil and criminal penalties they may face for simply doing their job. But with all of that as background, and you lived through the defund movement, your 3 sons are now police officers. So, number one, how did your wife feel about that? And number 2, why would you encourage your sons to become a law enforcement officer today?
Well, my wife, I'll start with that. She wishes they could have gone. My wife's an accountant. She would always say, well, couldn't one of them be an accountant?
There you go.
So, I had 2 that always wanted to be policemen. They wanted to follow in my footsteps. They really did. They are currently all suburban Chicago police officers here. They've all been on 10 years or more. And I encourage them. That's true. Because, when they were little kids, I brought them to every police event our department had. I mean, if we had what we would call a turkey shoot, or we had a Christmas with Santa, I always had my kids come with me. So they were used to that culture, and they were used to police officers. My 3rd son wanted to be a teacher, and he just randomly tested with a suburban police department and got an offer, and then he took that job, and now he's a sergeant on that department, and he loves it. But my wife would, to this day, she would like them to do something else, because it's hard. It was hard to go through that defund the police movement, because my son their departments went from being revered to people would put signs out on their lawn. They used to put signs, we support the police. And then the yard signs were defund the police and defame the police. And they would put all kinds of anti-police rhetoric, and they weren't used to seeing that. And it really affected them. And as you know, how difficult recruiting and retention is, they were individuals were coming into profession that never wanted to be police officers, or they were getting what I consider lower caliber. Because what happened here in Illinois is they lowered the police entry standards because they were having so difficult time recruiting officers after the Defund the Police movement and the George Floyd murder in Minneapolis. When I left Riverside, the last exam that we gave for police officer, 10 people showed up. 10 years before that, we had 350 for the written exam. So it had plummeted. But I always told my kids, this is the best profession. It's the most honorable profession. You will enjoy it. You will love it. There will be times you hate. There will be times that are really good, but it is an honest profession and honorable. And you know what? They bought into that, and they still buy into it. And I'm asked today, I asked the other day, somebody said to me, Tom, would you still today recommend that all of your sons go into policing? And I said I would. I am absolutely 100% behind this profession, and I would support my sons going in this profession now. And I also encourage other people that are still looking for a really honorable profession to still come in. Because, we need new blood. When I left as chief, we need new officers coming in to the profession that have the skills we need.
So, Tom, give us a little inside story in the Weitzel house when your first son decided he was going to become a cop, and what the dynamics were in that household, and how did he get the other two brothers to follow, or what was the reaction overall?
So my first son took the first job he could. You get out of college, you're testing. He was working, but he was testing. So he took a town in the south suburbs, hired him, called University Park. He stayed there about 6 months because he wanted to move on to a department that was larger and had more opportunities for advancement. And he ended up going through two departments, a department in Illinois called Suburban LaGrange Park, and then he ended up in North Riverside, which was next to where I work. Different community, though. And he loved it. And he would come home and just tell my other sons about how fantastic it was, and how they were making arrests every night, because that's what he thought his job was, right? And the community supported law enforcement. He had a really good department. The structure was good. They had a lot of opportunities. So he never said a bad word about it. And that really, my two other sons, my middle son, youngest son, they would listen to that, because at then they were living at home, and they would listen to that. And I think my oldest son, Alex, played a huge influence on my other two sons.
Excellent, excellent. And then now today, as things have evolved, and like you're saying, there used to be the support your police signs in the lawn, and now they're protesting against the police. It's the defame the police. And I think you got a story to tell us that your kids now are actually involved in what we've seen so oftentimes on the news now, is there's an ICE facility outside of Chicago there, and they have had protests going on a daily basis, and it's been something that your three kids now have to deal with.
Yeah, so that is the ICE facility in Broadview, Illinois, is just minutes from where two of my sons work. And the smaller agencies have these mutual aid packs. And what happens is, when they have these big protests, they don't have enough officers to handle it, even with ICE themselves. And sometimes they had Border Patrol still there. They would have to call on the Cook County Sheriff's Police, state police, and local police to assist them in skirmish lines and controlling protests. So I have sons that have been there on a regular basis, and it is brutal over there. The officers are being targeted. They're being injured on a regular basis. They're having bottles and bricks chucked at them. They're having dog feces wrapped up in plastic bags thrown at the officers. They're having bottles full of urine thrown. And it's all staged. My sons will tell me that every time they do this, they wait until the media gets there, and then the confrontation takes place. If the media is not there covering it, all it is yelling and screaming. Once the news stations and the print media shows up, then the surge is on to get in the facility where the confrontation takes place. So it's very staged for media attention.
It's so staged, so disingenuous. The other thing too is, we're treating all these people with such kid gloves. This is a funny story. I was in the gym the other day, and we were literally talking about this ICE facility outside of Chicago there in Illinois. And one of the guys in the gym said to me, why aren't the cops just blasting the balls off of them with the water cannons? Why don't they use the water cannons anymore? And I said, man, I would love to see that. I would love to see the water cannons. But it's the kid gloves. Oh, we got to treat them so well. Blah, 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 these little babies. The thing of it is if they'd have blast their ass with the water cannons one day, that would be the only day we'd ever hear about that, right? Because it would be over.
Yeah, they're just recently allowed to use less than lethal weapons. And here's the thing with that, that's what they're designed for. They're less than lethal. In fact, many of these activists that are at this Broadview facility, they've been preaching that for years, that police should use other tools than their firearms. Well, now they've been able to use pepper ball guns, stun guns, sometimes some type of mace or a chemical agent. And the newspapers here in the Chicago metropolitan area are blasting the police for using the less than lethal options. And I commented the other day, somebody interviewed me. I said, well, these are the weapons that you designed for police to use less than lethal. It's what they're meant for. It's what you've been advocating for. Now they're being used, and now you're slamming the police, saying they should not be using them. What do you think that the police officer's job is to sit there and get the crap beat out of them? Because it isn't. That's not in their job title. They're allowed to defend themselves. You don't have to be attacked to defend yourself. In my situation, you don't have to be shot to shoot back. There's this notion out there that you have to be stabbed or shot, or you have to be attacked first before you can respond. And that is not the legal standard in Illinois.
Good for you, Tom. Good for you for saying that, for standing up and voicing that loud and clear. I mean, I would just like to see, in the mornings when all those idiots show up, just greet them with a wave of tear gas every day and just say, good morning, motherfuckers,
But what they're doing, this attitude that cops can't use force of any kind, is resulting in serious threats to the lives of police officers who are now hesitant to use force when necessary, even less than lethal force, let alone lethal force. But sometimes if you don't react within seconds, your life could be taken by these criminal animals out there that are, they could care less about a cop's life. They don't even care about their own lives. Tom, I know we're getting near the this interview, but a couple quick points. One, thank you. I understand you're an ambassador now for the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund. And I started that program way back when I was still with the Memorial Fund. And I'm so thankful for people like yourself, seasoned veterans of law enforcement, people that have great integrity, great reputations. Now talking about the importance of the memorial, the importance of the National Law Enforcement Museum, the importance of Destination Zero, our safety program, trying to promote the safety and wellness for officers. So thank you, sir, for that. I wanted to have that opportunity to thank you myself. But last question I had for you is, I understand you have a bit of a personal crusade going on right now where you're trying to get the federal prosecutors to take over line of duty death cases when it comes to law enforcement, as opposed to leaving it up to the state and local jurisdictions. I'd just like you to talk about that, what you're thinking behind that type of change in the way we deal with line of duty deaths.
Yeah, first of all, it's my honor to serve as an ambassador for the memorial. No question about that. And the individuals I work most with, I love, and my direct supervisor, Matt Garcia, is superior individual that I work with at the memorial. So what I've been trying to do for 15 years is I saw over the years that all police investigations, when there's a police line of duty death, aren't handled the same way. And in fact, in many rural areas and small communities who don't have the resources and don't request a lot of assistance from either their state police or federal partners, those investigations are not conducted and evidence is not collected universally throughout the United States. And I believe that some of those cases there's missteps, there's evidence missed, there's leads missed, there's local politicians who serve as state's attorneys who don't really push for prosecution in the right manner. I'm a huge believer in that we need to have uniformity in that. So I was pushing this federal legislation that would make the murder of a police officer in the line of duty a federal crime and investigated by federal agencies, similar to what I theorized was the FAA has this thing called a GO team. So when an airplane crash happens, the FAA immediately dispatches this GO team that comes with experts in everything. Boeing, engines, gas, the manufacture, everything. So I envisioned a GO team when a police officer is killed in the line of duty, that this GO team would come with the federal prosecutor, FBI, Secret Service, ATF, evidence collection people from FBI, and they would work with the local law enforcement. We wouldn't X them out of it, but we would work together, and then the prosecution would be at the federal level, so there's no politics involved. That survivors' families, and I really have become an advocate working with the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund ambassador for family. Victims' families need to be heard, and you need to trust the investigation of your loved one that was murdered in the line of duty. You need to trust that investigation. You need to trust the department knows what they're doing and that the prosecution knows what they're doing, and you go for the full extent of the law. I'm not a person that believes there should be any parole or early release for any police officer, the offender that shoots and kills a police officer or stabs them or whatever. You should serve 100% of your time, if not get the death penalty. I have been criticized for some of that, but that's my belief. I think that needs to be uniformed as far as a federal statute. So I've been fighting for that for 15 years. The only administration to acknowledge me is the Trump administration. I reached out to the Biden administration twice. I've reached out to the federal prosecutor's office. They have never gotten back to me in previous administrations. My own state federal Tammy Duckworth, for example, or Mr. Durbin. I have emailed them, called their office, wrote them letters, and I keep this all. Never, ever a response from them. Even an acknowledgement that, hey, maybe I could work with you and look into, if this doesn't work, we could come up with a modification. Never had a response.
Tom, you're 100% right on that, 100% right. And quite frankly, if it were to go federal, you could then move forward with the death penalty in all 50 states, right? Because you don't have the death penalty otherwise. And, your point and what you're talking about, you and Craig should get together. Tom, you should put this op-ed together. Craig can help you get that published, and we can help you even bring that in front of Congress. So I think that's something we should follow up on.
Sure.
I love that idea. And we are advocating for a piece of legislation that's been in Congress the last couple of Congresses at least. It's called the Thin Blue Line Act. And basically, this would allow for more circumstances where the death penalty for killing a law enforcement officer would be in play. And to Bill's point, there are many states, most states in this nation, who have eliminated the death penalty and have never imposed the death penalty in decades and never will. But if in fact this was made a federal crime, to Bill's point, it would be eligible for the death penalty. So, Tom, let's plan on working together, seeing what we can do. I love the idea of an op-ed that would make the case and explain why this would be a good change, something that is needed, and why. And we can certainly help amplify that message. So thank you, sir. Once again, I think we nailed it, Dennis and Bill. We call our show Heroes Behind the Badge. I think we've got one of those heroes in our midst.
Tom,
Tom
you
says
got me,
he's not a hero, but I would disagree with him.
Tom, you got me fired up today. You got me
Okay.
on a roll a couple of times.
Yeah, you really, I don't know of anybody that we've had as a guest that embodies what Citizens Behind the Badge is all about. Tom is like perfect. I mean, what courage. You take a stand and you stand up for what's right. So we appreciate you telling your story. You know, your story is not just about that night that changed your life. It's about what you chose, and it was your choice what to do afterwards, how you fought for others, and how you've continued to serve long after you retired the badge. Because of your fight, officers across Illinois are safer. Because of your persistence, the law is stronger. Because of your voice, which we heard today loud and clear, because of your voice, families facing that worst day of their lives are not alone. So, Tom Weitzel, thank you for telling your story. Thank you for representing for police. Thank you for showing all of us what commitment looks like long after the sirens fade. We appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm honored.
And let me remind our listeners, Heroes Behind the Badge is a podcast brought to you by Citizens Behind the Badge. Citizens Behind the Badge is the leading voice of the American people in support of the men and women of law enforcement. You can get involved. And if you liked anything Tom Weitzel said today, and there was a whole lot to like, his stand and his theory on policing, will you do us a favor and do yourself a favor? Hit like, hit subscribe, hit follow, hit all three to show that you support what Tom is all about and his courageous stand that he's taken, and to also be first to hear the next new episodes of Heroes Behind the Badge. We are constantly doing new episodes, and you will be the first to know when you follow, like, and subscribe. Heroes Behind the Badge is brought to you by citizensbehindthebadge.org. Citizensbehindthebadge.org. You can click on that and get involved. We would love to have you become one of the hundreds of thousands of Americans who are supporting their police. You can do so on citizensbehindthebadge.org. That's it for this episode of Heroes Behind the Badge. We look forward to seeing you again. We'll give you a nice warm welcome back very soon on the new episodes of Heroes Behind the Badge.